areas that we're looking in, or
Yep.
like how do you sort of
How do
direct?
you find them?
How do you find their
So
properties?
a lot of our work at the moment is in that home buying space. So someone's buying their family home or that upgraded property that we spoke about earlier. So they'll come to us, they've got a budget of, might be $2 million, might be $1 million, might be really 1.6 in Wembley.
Yeah.
So we sit down and we've got 6 agents on the ground now that specialise in their specific suburbs. So we've got Ryan that does a lot of the outer western suburbs, Swanbourne, Cottesloe, Rowan, inner western suburbs. We've got Chris now doing south of the river. I do a lot of the inner city stuff. So depending on the area they're looking for will depend on the advisor.
Yeah.
And then we're there to listen, find out exactly what it is. Obviously give some suggestions, but it is subjective in terms of what you want's going to differ, or what Deb wants to what's different. So we need to understand that. But we'll give recommendations. Look, Deb, for 1.5, you can't. What you're trying to do isn't achievable. And if I keep you out of the market for another 6 months, that next suburb may become unachievable. So it's really having good, honest conversations about where people are at with their brief and budget, and trying to execute that. So then we go out and facilitate that home purchase for them. If it's investment, it's a completely different world.
I was going to say, because obviously home buying, it's all about
It's
location
emotional.
and emotional, whereas investment's just what's going to...
It's black and white, it's the data. So, we spend a lot of capital in the data space. We're buying in 36 suburbs across Perth for investment. So it's not anywhere, it's very, very specific areas and specific properties. 75 to 80% of the value in those assets are land value. So it's important to get that balance right. So from that point of view, it's, we dictate a lot of the conversation on where they're buying for investment. We obviously live with that acquisition, much as we do in the home buying space, but that advice we live with throughout the journey. So we're very specific, and I can go through that in more detail in terms of that investment space, but it's completely different conversation to home buying. One's really emotional and led by the client. One's fact and figures, black and white, and for some clients we may miss out on 10, 11 properties because we'll find a property that we like, we'll negotiate, we'll set a walk away price, we'll move on. And it can be, but we want to buy well. There's no reason to compromise. So yeah, 2 different sort of areas of our business, different advisors and different appetites for what they're purchasing.
It makes sense, right? I mean, what I'm seeing around where I am is there's not, they're not even putting prices on stuff. They're just going to make an offer. So you wouldn't even know where to start. Presented. Then it might be 3 weeks. I saw one in my own street that at the end of the day, that was the case. Offers presented, finalising 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time, and within 2 days it was under offer. The home opening was cancelled, so obviously the offer was better than
what I expected.
So,
and that makes it really difficult. So even in that space, we're just we're there to support the buyers. There's a lot of coverage out there for people to represent the sellers, and 6,000 agents in Perth can do that. There's very few that represent the buyers or represent them well. So even if it's some of your clients more recently, just giving them advice on particular properties, happy to do that. Happy to give it a price, appraisal and or valuation to see what they should be looking at, do the due diligence. Because again, unless you're in the market every day, unless you know what's sold down the street, present all offers.
Where do you even start? I know, and that's true because obviously we have access to do RP data reports and that type of thing. But like you said, they're just so inaccurate at the moment.
Well, that could be 3 months. Realistically, you buy a property on a 25-day finance, hopefully longer in your case, if it's 35, and then it might be at best 45 days from unconditional. That's still 2.5 months till it settles for when it's purchased. What happens at the moment? Without a doubt.
And actually another thing that, again, wasn't something I was overly familiar with, but over the last maybe 6-12 months seeing more of it is auctions. Which I know it's always been the way in the eastern states, but that's just something, and now I'm seeing a lot more of that because I'm obviously looking for houses all the time. And again, it's like, how do you know where to start? Where do you know
where to finish? And that's probably the toughest landscape. We do go to auctions quite often, but once it's there, the reality is it's who's got the deepest pockets. And typically the person who's got the deepest pockets is the one that's missed out on 7 properties leading up to that. So once it gets to auction, look, we do go there, we represent clients at auction, but we do everything in our powers not to go there. Can we buy it before it goes to auction? That's our #1 goal. And there's a lot of different strategies there. Sometimes the night before is the best opportunity when they start to get really nervous, the vendors. And we've done 3 or 4 we've purchased the night before the auction. And that is the only way that we can really cancel the auction. Because once we're there, it's a public forum, you literally, you can have all the strategies in terms of bidding. I'm going to go in aggressively, I'm going to play the macho card, I'm going to be passive, coming late, doesn't matter. But there's going to be someone there that's going to go deeper than us, because we'll never pay the most for it at an auction. We'll never pay the most for that property. So it makes it really difficult in that situation. So auctions, I think the fact that Perth's been in such a stagnant position for so long, it's created an auction market. It needs to be the right environment to get a lot of competition, understanding that people need to be in cash offer position. Perth hasn't come to terms with that yet. Melbourne and Sydney have gone through really bullish markets for the last decade. And from a sales agent point of view, in those markets, it is really difficult to price assets. So they may sit in front of a vendor and say, what's my property worth? Well, I think it's worth X, but the market, I don't know. So the best way to determine that is create as much competition as you can, get as much exposure as you can, get a competitive environment. And it's a great campaign. Now we're in a space where it is competitive, particularly in the higher end of town. They get really good turnout and they're getting really good results. But the problem is if you fail at auction, you become really exposed and it can really put you in a negative position. So it's got to be the right property, it's got to be the right market. So I think we haven't been in the right market prior to sort of 2019. Certainly now we're going to see more of them. Hopefully from our point of view, we're not negotiating on too many of them. But I can see that it's, particularly for the right property, a great strategy to sell.
Because it is quite nerve-wracking, because even, we really preach get your pre-approval done. But a pre-approval is still going to be subject to evaluation, and that's the bit that we can't control. So clients kind of have to be mindful that they may have to fund an extra amount of cash.
Do you have an extra 100,000 if the valuation doesn't start? And they're the honest conversations. And it's just about getting ready for auction. You can't stress how important anything is just being buy ready. Because if you're not buy ready, you're going to go there and you're going to walk away and go, what have I just done? But if you know, this is your dream property, you're not going to miss out. You're going to willing to pay 100,000 over what it's worth. Well, just be prepared. Do you have that cash savings to be able to support that? If you do, then that's not going to stop that happening, right? But it's just making sure that everyone knows what's at stake and what they can and can't do. The last thing you want to do is have someone buy a property they can't settle on. That's a court case waiting. And we've seen examples of that, and it's not. No one wants that situation. The sellers or the buyers or the agents involved.